Hello, and welcome everyone to the second installment of the LA Conservation Corps' inaugural Speakers Series presented by Boeing. Our theme over these three virtual meetings is resilience, unleashing the power of youth. We've seen that in the work they have done for themselves and the community in response to the pandemic, and most recently in response to the devastating wildfires that have swept across our state. I'm actually connecting with you today from Butte County, where we have two crews assisting another corps in caring for animals that were recently displaced by the North Complex fires. They're working alongside PhDs and veterinarians from Texas A&M who are out here providing their disaster assessment and recovery services. And our corps members are taking dogs for walks, cleaning cats and dogs' cages, giving all of the animals they come into contact with some good pets and care. We have, today I'm actually at a site where there are horses, sheep, chickens, and there was a huge group of cattle up until a couple weeks ago. But we're collaborating with the Cesar Chavez Environmental Corps under their contract from the California Office of Emergency Services. And as I often do, I ask our corps members, what the work means to them. I asked our corps members yesterday if the work with the animals was something they were interested in before their trip up here. And one of them, Edwin, told me that he is now. And so that's what it's all about. That's what we do at the Corps. It's about making introductions, giving corps members an opportunity to work on projects they never even knew about. So we're going to show you a few slides from what they have been doing up here this week. So again, the work is specifically animal care related. This is Edwin, one of our South LA Corps members, near doing some cleaning of the cats' cages. And here he is with his fellow Corps member. Today I'm with the Compton crew, and they are right now working with only sheep and chickens. All of the horses have been picked up, but here are some good shots of them. This is from earlier, some of these are from earlier in the week, Mercedes with her chicken. These are our corps members alongside the corps members from Cesar Chavez Environmental Corps. There was a lot of traffic in and out that has kind of calmed down. That's my dad. I brought him with me, and one of the corps members from Cesar Chavez Environmental Corps. So just some exciting work that our corps members get an opportunity to participate in as corps members at the LA Conservation Corps. So before we get going, just a quick note, we invite you to type questions into the Q&A box as we go along, and we will get to as many of those as we can as we close out. Most of you know the Corps has always had this amazing dual bottom line that goes back to the original incarnation of the Civilian Conservation Corps, which was conceived in the 30s during the Great Depression. At its heart, it is about providing opportunities for personal and professional growth to young people experiencing unemployment. But we get to do that by working on amazing environmental restoration and climate resiliency projects, community greening initiatives, neighborhood improvement projects, and so much more. And that intersection is what we want to talk about today. Young people have always been the voice of change, and today more than anyone, they are driving the conversations about climate change, environmental justice, and the future of the planet. We want to dig into what opportunities exist for young people to get further involved, how they can use their voice, and what resonates with them about our current state of the environment. So let me introduce our panelists. Jake Levine is a member of the Public Policy Practice Group and the Clean Energy and Climate Industry Group at Covington and Burling. Jake has been working at the intersection of clean energy policy and technology for some time. Prior to joining his current firm, he served as senior counsel and principal consultant to California State Senator Fran Pavley, where he led a team focused on state policy related to climate change, electric vehicles, energy storage, drought, and water policy. As part of his duties in the state Senate, Mr. Levine led the successful campaign to draft, design, and enact SB 32, authored by Pavley, and Assembly Bill 197, authored by Garcia. new climate and environmental justice legislation in California. Jake has worked in the private sector at O-Power, a software firm that uses big data and behavioral science technology to help consumers take control of their energy use, and in the White House Office of Energy and Climate Change. Most recently, Jake worked on drafting the plan for California Volunteers' new California Climate Action Corps, which gets underway this January. He's going to tell us a little more about the program later. He and I have gotten to know each other over the past couple years and spent more time together over the past 4 months while he took a break from lawyering to consult with California Volunteers. And next we have Lawrence Melendez, Senior Program Manager for the LA Conservation Corps, who works out of our East LA site. Lawrence is about 4 years into his experience at the Corps and oversees numerous work projects, and is also serving as a very high contributing member of our internal new program innovation team. His background is primarily education, specifically as a teacher and instructor of mathematics for about a decade. He holds a bachelor's in mathematics, a master's in education, and is considering pursuing a PhD. Outside of work, he is an outdoor adventurer, specifically lots of hiking and trail running, with a general penchant for seeking out nature's grandeur in all of its forms. And finally, I'm very happy today to introduce and welcome Oscar Mourillo, a new Corps member at our East LA site. Oscar's primary job is to provide technical support and administrative assistance. He has an educational background in natural sciences and is learning about geographic information systems. He will be at Cal State LA this spring, where he will be majoring in geography. And in the future, he would like to get a master's of environmental science to better settle into a career in a related field. So Lawrence, let's start with you. Can you get everyone up to speed on what kinds of projects we are doing here at the Corps that you think have a positive impact on climate change?
Yeah, so thank you, Wendy. So, I mean, I'm not a climate scientist, so I can't say specifically, but I mean, we are the Los Angeles Conservation Corps. I'd like to believe that every project that we take on has a benefit to the environment and in some ways affects the climate change that we're facing. I mean, from something as indirect as, say, cleaning alleys, where we remove debris that no longer makes its way into our stormwater. That's always a good thing for the environment. But then maybe specifically more like we do fire fuel reduction. So that's directly combating the consequences of climate change. Those are two different things that I'm not privy to, but I'm aware that we do. Now, specifically to here at the East LA site, I've participated in and we're currently doing energy audits. We did them on a large scale for school districts where we went into various schools and helped them review and analyze their energy use, hopefully to curb that energy use and thus reduce some of the effects of climate change. And I think the big one that I know we're probably going to discuss today is we do a lot of tree planting and landscape improvements where we remove various built environments, aka concrete, and we replace it with a much more natural landscape, hopefully with the inclusion of a tree. And then we do specific tree planting projects, just tree planting as it is on street trees and in public spaces. And from my understanding, I love trees, but they also have a great benefit in the battle against climate change.
How do you think the young people in our program respond to working on those types of projects?
I think they think they're laborious, but that's on the surface. No, I mean, they are very labor intensive. And so I think that is high on their mind. But I think innately, maybe not even directly, they have a sense that it's good for the community. They may not be able to put their finger on exactly why. As part of the PIT team I call it the PIT, the Program Innovation Team that you mentioned, one of my goals would be to hopefully kind of more formalize some of that consciousness around that labor intensive stuff that they're doing, so that they can maybe get it's like a perfect storm for a teacher. You get to teach and they get to do, so that'd be a great idea. But no, I mean, I think it's innately there for them that they understand that it's a good thing. I read this particular, I think it's from a book or an article where it's, for only about 10 generations or so have we lived in these dense urban settings. And there's 350,000 generations where we're much more attached to a natural environment. And so I think it's innate in all of us, and I believe it's innate in the core members that we have here, that they look at these projects and they know there's something good about it. Maybe not know exactly what it is, but they know it's good. It's hard, but it's good work, and they know that. So that's how I think they respond to our projects.
Thank you. Oscar, tell us about the project you're working on at the Corps, and how do you think it will help the Corps?
A tree maintenance project.
The
And
project, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, so it's a tree maintenance project. And what I'm basically trying to accomplish is to create digital maps so that users can better see information regarding the trees, where they're located, and the condition that they're in. This would help users identify which trees are stressing. And yeah, that's another thing that I do is create feature reports to identify any trees that are stressing so that we can get notified of which trees need to be tended to.
Awesome. And how does that specifically help what we're doing here at the Corps? What project is this work are you working on?
Well, I mean, overall, I think it helps with the tree, like maintaining the trees, I guess. Yeah, I wouldn't.
It says it keeps us on track.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you. So Jake, I set this up at the beginning, but tell us a little bit about the California Climate Action Corps, what it will be and why we should all be excited about it.
Sure. Well, thanks, Wendy, for including me and for putting this together. It's really great to be here and to join Lawrence and Oscar. You know, basically just listening to Lawrence and Oscar speak first. The California Climate Action Corps is really about giving everybody a chance to participate in the kinds of projects that you guys are doing every day. The mission of the Corps is to empower all Californians to take action on climate change, which is sometimes a challenge that feels sort of hard to tackle, overwhelming, difficult to understand where you as an individual can actually contribute. A lot of times people ask me, what's the most tangible thing that I can do to contribute to climate change? And my best answer has always been, you can vote for leaders who prioritize science, who put climate change at the top of their agenda, who hold polluters accountable. But we wanted to give people something a little bit more, not to downplay the importance of voting, particularly in this season of voting that we're in at the moment, but to give people something that they can actually do with their hands and their bodies and their minds to really engage on climate change on their own. And so hopefully we'll have a chance to talk a little bit more about this, but basically what the Corps is doing is we are deploying hundreds of climate organizing fellows throughout communities across the state that are going to organize and galvanize projects and action, just like the kinds of projects that you guys are leading at the LA Corps and that your sister corps throughout the state are doing to reduce emissions, to increase equity and equality in the environment, and to provide meaningful opportunities for service and climate.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, hopefully we can talk a little bit more. I will share with all of you, we have applied for a couple fellows. One will be housed at the LA Conservation Corps and the other one at Conservation Corps of Long Beach. And our hope is that those fellows will make everything we do a little bit easier throughout the city and the county, and help really connect all of our work to this broader climate change umbrella of messaging. So we're really excited to get the word that those fellows are on the, have been approved, and then we'll start interviewing. So some exciting things happening around that program. So I wanted to share a quote from a new favorite book of mine, and I know Lawrence knows about this book, and Jake knows about the book too, because I talk about it a lot, but it's called The Overstory, and it's by Richard Powers. And it has this overarching theme of trees that shows up throughout all of these little vignette stories at the beginning of the book. And then it brings everybody together. Trees bring everybody together in the actual, what I would call the more novel part of the book. So the quote says, there's a Chinese saying, when is the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. The Chinese engineer smiles, good one. When is the next best time? Now. So why are we talking about planting more trees, Jake? Is that really going to make a difference? And do you think that it's the best place to be investing scarce dollars right now? Oh,
Sorry, Zoom mute. The short answer is yes. It is going to make a difference, and that it is a good place to be putting scarce dollars. The longer answer, and I can give you a little bit of insight into this, you know, we, as part of the Climate Corps sort of design process, we asked ourselves, what should we actually be doing from a substantive programmatic basis? And, you know, you could imagine a whole host of different projects where we might want to get involved, everything from energy efficiency to solar, other kinds of renewable energy projects, watershed restoration. You know, it just runs the gamut in terms of the needs and the kinds of technologies and projects that people could get involved in. Trees are really interesting because they provide benefits across the board. So not only do they provide sort of this, what I think is probably on the top of people's minds, sort of climate benefit, because they sequester carbon from the atmosphere and they produce oxygen, but they also provide huge benefits in terms of energy conservation. So when we're talking about reducing people's energy bills, either at home or in a multifamily or commercial setting, having trees that provide shade and cool the environment and sort of work to counteract the urban heat island is a critical tool for energy conservation. Also, in terms of just reducing heat in cities. And this, again, is a major equity issue, because in parts of cities that are tree deprived or where the tree canopy has been degraded over time, those parts of the cities typically coincide with communities that are otherwise disadvantaged in some other way. They're low income, they're under-resourced, they're vulnerable to other impacts. And so increasing tree canopy presence and density is a really critical tool for providing equity there as well. And then also on the air quality side of things, trees are a huge sort of ecosystem service in that regard as well. Not only do they reduce air pollution, but they can provide strategic buffers depending on where they are placed between communities and other sort of uses of the land, whether that's industrial or construction or agricultural. So we felt from the Corps' perspective, with the limited resources that we have available to us, that investing in trees was a no-brainer. And also, quite frankly, there's such a robust tree infrastructure set up because of organizations like the LA Conservation Corps, where if we are able to direct resources directly to you, we know that the sort of the efficiency of doing that is really high, because you're able to sort of plug and play and apply those resources to your existing programs, many of which are focused on tree planting.
yes, I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you. So Oscar, I mentioned before, and as you shared with me when we talked last week, you are studying environmental science in school. What kind of career are you thinking about?
So I'm thinking of getting a career in environmental management or conservation, or possibly something in cartography, which is basically making maps. I think that those are the main things that like get me interested. Yeah, but I still have to wait until I get more education and then kind of settle into my interest with school.
And what do you think the Corps should be doing for communities in Los Angeles in terms of climate resilience and environmental work?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind for me is education. It's really teaching people about some of the issues and, you know, just letting people know that there are, you know, some things that that need to be done. And I think that educating the public is really the first step. It's really the the foundation for people to become aware and to just be wary that their actions can have larger consequences as a whole. So, you know, that's what I think.
Why do you think young people, and especially Corps members or young people of your age, should care about protecting the environment?
Well, I think that the younger generations are really the ones who inherit the earth and the condition that it's in. So the younger generation is really responsible, because if they don't care, then the earth is going to deteriorate, you know. So there's a high importance on letting the younger generation be aware of climate change and everything that can go wrong.
Thank you. Lawrence, back to you. What inspires you about this generation, and what do you want them to know about their ability to affect change and use their voice?
Well, I mean, what is that noise? Did everyone hear that? Oh, okay. What inspires me about them? I mean, it's kind of natural for me. I mean, I come from a mind frame of a teacher, so I just believe that young people can learn, and then they can do things, and then they will create things that we have no idea what they are. And so my current role, I don't get to interact as much as I would love as a teacher, you know, directly interacting with students. But it is nice, I guess. So if you're talking about being inspired by them, when you have a certain conversation around a particular topic that you really didn't think was settling in, and then they just give you this little nugget of like, oh yeah, it's there. Like, you know, it may not be pervasive for me to see on every level. They're busy, particularly here, you know, they're tired. They come back tired and labored, but it's in their minds. And so it's always nice to see, like, when you have that conversation around a specific environmental conservation type idea, and you're like, oh yes, all right, it's going to be okay. But again, I think I innately believe that I have to, otherwise I would not want to be alive. So so I just choose to believe that. But I do see that. I most certainly see it in I met Oscar, and I'm like, you know, it's a young guy from Boyle Heights who's all into GIS. I was like, yes, awesome. So I mean, that inspires me about them.
And what do you want them to know about their ability to affect change and use their voice?
Well, I mean, so I do this thing called Wisdom Wednesday. Sometimes I spell it D-U-M-B because I'm just messing around. Wisdom Wednesday. But what I do is I go to this website, the Good News Network, and I try and counteract all the pervasive negative news that we see. But I don't just do it with, sometimes it's a puppy type story, but I don't really do that. I do a lot of it around the work that we do. And I do it to share with them, first of all, the positive things that are coming out of you know, even this current, you know, the COVID environment and the various tensions going on. I do it to counteract that, but particularly around the environment and climate change, to show them the amount of opportunities that exist to make the changes. And not only that, but where they live at, California, particularly Southern California, a lot of the stories that I share with them are surrounded, they're surrounding them. So, and we are just a tool, a pathway to get there. I can't guide you. I can't literally hand it to you, but it's here, and I'm trying to share as much as I can with them. So I'm always reminding them, constantly reminding them that it is them. They're the ones that are going to come up with the thing. What is the thing? I don't know. You know, not me. And so, but I believe, so I'm constantly reminding them of that.
Great. And then what have you learned about the power of planting a tree or getting out into nature for young people like those in our program since you've been at the Corps?
I think Jake mentioned it right now. I think I remember a conversation when I've only been here for 4 years, and I've always been a natural person that likes to go outside. But, you know, I most certainly didn't tie everything together. And the one thing he mentioned about, you know, planting a tree, it's great, it looks nice. But the idea of the energy conservation aspect of it, like that comes from it. And it's an easy one to get once you think about it. And I remember having conversations around when I was going out to the tree planting events and explaining to them like why they're doing it, giving conversations around that. And they realized like, oh yeah, I really would. That would actually work, right? It is like, oh, and that whole making sense of the power of a tree. I think it's eye-opening. It was eye-opening for me, and I was an adult, and it's definitely eye-opening for them. And they thought, oh yeah, and I'm planting all these trees, you know, because they're planting in areas they live. Alex Lopez, my boss, right? he's, I don't know, 40 something years old, and he constantly reminds me of how 20 something years ago he planted that tree on Cesar Chavez every time we drive by it. And I give him a hard time, but it's true. He sees the results of his work. And so, and I think for the Corps members, the trees, they see it when they plant this young tree, and then they, over the years, even here, they most certainly can see the impact that they're having. And so tree planting is a real, it's got lots of benefits, but it's got this other visual, visceral effect on people that the Corps members get as well.
Yep, the simple act of planting a tree can make such a big difference. So Jake, I'll come back to you, and then we would love to get some questions from our audience. And if you all have questions for one another too, I would love to facilitate that discussion. But there are three elements, as I understand it, and to the California Climate Action Corps. And one of them, we've talked a lot about urban greening, but there are also these elements of food recovery and home hardening. So what are you thinking about, the team of you who has put together this plan? Why these three? And you alluded to it a little earlier, but how will these three interplay with one another in meeting the goals of the Climate Action Corps?
Sure. So, so the Climate Action Corps is like, we just launched it, and its first year will be in 2021. And, the intention of the program is that it will be something that grows and that is durable over time, and will be able to sort of take on a suite of climate projects. In the first year, what we wanted to do was really prove the model and find areas of focus that were both meaningful from a climate and equity perspective, and also were responsive to some of the needs that the state is experiencing right now. So where we landed was, as you indicated, urban tree planting, food rescue programs and food waste prevention, and wildfire preparedness, which is home hardening and defensible space education and action. And on the sort of the food and the wildfire fronts, these felt like meaningful programs because, first of all, I'll take the second one first, but anybody that's been living in California this year has experienced the record devastating wildfires that we've been having. And this is now, the second year in the last 3 that has set these kinds of records. And every year seems to be, worse than the one before. And we felt that in order to really sort of give back and fulfill our mission as an organization, which is, I should have said that the team that put together the Climate Corps is an organization called California Volunteers, which is a small office that sits inside the governor's office. And it's focused on service and volunteerism. And so, we want to make sure that we were providing opportunities for service and volunteerism, and that those were really addressing critical needs that the state has. So wildfire felt like an obvious one, and something that we think as a climate community that we need to sort of be shifting our focus, not just to be around sort of climate mitigation and prevention strategies, but also around adaptation and how are we actually going to be living with the impacts that we're now experiencing. And then, on the food rescue side, this is something that Cal Volunteers was sort of conscripted into early on as part of its COVID response. And we were able to organize tens of thousands of volunteers to participate in food banking and pantry delivery services to people who are food insecure in the state. And one of the things that we realized about this is that there's actually a huge climate and environment opportunity in food waste prevention as well, because when food goes to the landfill, it creates waste that actually generates greenhouse gas emissions through the creation of methane. And so if you're able to eliminate a significant amount of waste that goes to the landfills, you can eliminate climate emissions on the back end, but also on the front end, if you're able to be more efficient with the food that you actually have and waste less of it, then you don't need to produce as much. And so we also felt that we were able to drive emissions reductions through sort of front end food waste efforts as well. And so that's kind of how we landed on those 3 projects. I will say that we had our application process close, as you know, at the end of last week. And the breadth of the programs that we received that people applied to do was much broader than these 3 areas of focus. And that's really exciting for us. And so, you know, we'll have an opportunity to sort of experiment a little bit here and there with different kinds of programs, including some solar programs, some programs focused on mobility and transportation. So if there's a lot to do in the first year, our hope is that we can deliver some real sort of results and metrics and quantifiable reductions around our work with trees, food, and wildfire protection.
Great, looking forward to it. So do any of you have questions for one another? Anything that was said that you want to follow up on? No? How about I don't see any questions from our audience. Does anybody have any questions? Well, I might let you go early, but I wanted to just say hello to a couple folks. I wanted to say hello to your mother, Jake. She's joining us. And hi to Julie and hi to Vanessa. I wanted, you know, I'm going to go ahead and leave us with a longer passage from the Overstory. Oh, I see it. I see something in the chat before we. Oh, great. Thank you, Alex. So I'm going to thank everyone, and then I'm going to leave us with a passage that I hope will get you inspired, and that inspiration will lead you through your day and into your weekend. But first off, thanks to everyone who has joined. Thank you to our esteemed panelists. Each of you just brings, you know, a different set of goals, a different viewpoint, and we're glad to hear from each of you. We appreciate you sharing your lunch hour with us and your great thinking and inspiration. And then a special thank you, of course, to the sponsors of our speakers series, Boeing, thank you, Vanessa, SoCal Gas and Gallagher. And we have one more panel discussion in this 3-part series next Thursday, and we're going to kind of shift the focus a little bit. Our first discussion was about economic stimulus and recovery and where cores fit into all of that. But there's also a lot going on with our core members and young people and people in general, just in terms of health and mental health. So we're going to be talking about what we're all doing to cope and hear from some experts. We'll be joined by Assemblywoman Luz Rivas, who is a former Clean and Green participant, and she is moving forward a lot of legislation at the state level that supports the health and mental health of Californians. We'll also be joined by Love Jefferson, who is a person who has worked with a lot of our core members over the years at Fulcrum Learning Systems. Tons of teamwork and team building activities. And one of our core members who is pursuing a career related to mental health counseling. So I'm excited. Please join us for that. I'm going to give you all one more chance. No more questions. I don't see any questions. So this
There's
is
a question
my,
for Oscar.
Oh, there is.
Oh, so Gabby asked what inspired me to pick this industry. And it was really in 10th grade when I was taking a biology class that I had a teacher who showed us this film called An Inconvenient Truth. And it was really with that movie and that class that kind of exposed me to some of the issues in the environment, and I've since then continued to study environmental issues, and hopefully I can land in an industry.
Great, yeah, a movie we should all see. Erica, did you have any questions?
We had one question for Oscar.
We got, oh, sorry.
Are you optimistic about your future, and why?
I am optimistic, but you know, there are ups and downs. There's these oscillations within, you know, the progress of my life. But I think that eventually I will get there. But yeah, that's really all I have.
And do you think that, do you feel optimistic about like this conversation and the work that your generation can do to combat climate change and to protect our environment and our communities and our neighborhoods? Let us know that there's the willpower there to make some change.
Yeah, I definitely think that there can be a lot of improvements made, especially with the advancement of technology. It's getting simpler and easier for anybody to kind of, you know, get their foot in the door and start learning some of the things that are necessary to start protecting the environment.
Great. There is a question about the other work we're doing across the Corps, so I'll share. We do a lot of tree planting, as we talked about today, but we're also working on some pretty cool technical projects. Maybe Lawrence, when I finish up here, you can talk a little bit about the Compton Creek Walking Path project. That's definitely something that has been brought into our project portfolio over the last 5 to 10 years, is more technical projects that really give our Corps members specific skills, after which we are losing our Corps members to some really great jobs. So of course that's the goal always. We actually have a food waste recovery project funded by CalRecycle right now. So we're looking really forward to having our fellows, our Climate Action Corps fellows, work on expanding that. Right now we're working with an organization in the San Fernando Valley called MEND, and we go out, we go to restaurants and grocery stores and bring back to MEND the food that is no longer edible or sellable. MEND determines if it is indeed edible, and if it is, it's shared with clients, and if it's not, we take it to our partner Ralph's. They have this aerobic digester in Compton, which is pretty awesome and creates compost. So that's a new innovative project we've launched over the last couple of years, but we continue to be funded by CalRecycle. We have beverage container collection services, used tire and waste tire collection. So we have vehicles that go out every day and are collecting tires that are just discarded into alleyways or on the streets, and we get those to the proper recycling facilities. We also do some used oil education in places where you can take your used oil. There, we make sure the signage is up about how to correctly leave that oil so it is indeed recyclable. And then we do some e-waste collection events through our CalRecycle grant. We are always doing graffiti abatement, mostly in the center city, so Council Districts 8 and 10. We also have projects with MWD where we go out and we actually remove some of that fire fuel load from their sites to ensure that if there is a fire that it doesn't reach the MWD facilities. I know I'm forgetting some really amazing projects, but Lawrence, why don't you give us a little primer on the Compton Creek Walking Path project? What's going on there?
Yeah. Oh, one, my apologies for forgetting to say that we do the recycling. That was at the beginning. I probably should have mentioned that. I don't partake in it, so that's probably, but I mean, we'd have the most certainly have a recycling program. The Compton Creek project is really cool. It is a half-mile long trail right adjacent to the Compton Creek. It serves a lot of purposes. It takes an unused area and makes it usable. It's bringing back some form of habitat around there that didn't exist. But great, it's a connection, which I believe the county in general is trying to do, connect many trails. And so right now it connects a path that we did that was about maybe like less than a quarter of a mile long to this half-mile long, which connects further to the remaining bike pathway, which it needs to be improved upon, but it's pretty lengthy. So it gives the local residents there a nice place to go and walk along that's vastly improved compared to how it was. And we've done that one. We're planning with native and drought-tolerant plants, as you mentioned. Lots of experience for our core members. We've directly hired out of that project 1, 2, 3. We're getting upwards of like 7 or 8 core members over the past year and a half, directly hired into places. So I mean, it's yeah, and that's always it's obviously great. It's just we need them to do the project. But it's been a great experience for everyone. It's a challenge for sure, but it's been great.
And I forgot to mention our project in Culver City. We are working at the Baldwin Hills Scenic Overlook and doing some trail work, but also building these, if you've ever been there, the cool stairs that go up the hillside, and doing a lot of planting there. So the core members that are here with me today from Compton are usually working out there. So they're enjoying a nice change of pace, taking care of the animals, because that is, like Lawrence said, very difficult work, very hard work. So we do have a couple other questions. Jake, Julie asked if the climate organizing fellows get compensated or, are they volunteer positions? I'll let you answer that.
They get compensated. So these are the secret sauce, actually, to our program is that these are Americorps Fellowships. And so somebody who volunteers and signs up to be a California Climate Action Corps Fellow will be participating in an Americorps program and will be compensated through Americorps, and actually will also receive a stipend to sort of support their education. And we're now in the process of kind of figuring out what all of that looks like. It's a exercise of sort of combining federal and state budgets, and then also fundraising from the sort of community of philanthropists and people who are interested in contributing to this work. But it's a really good question because, there was a lot of discussion about sort of what the role of a volunteer really should be in the world of climate work, and where we pretty clearly landed was that if people are going to be providing labor and work in a full-time capacity, they should be paid. And the best way for us to accomplish that was to partner with Americorps. There are other things that Climate Corps will be organizing that will be unpaid opportunities for people who may just have a weekend or a week or even just a handful of hours to contribute, but still nonetheless want to get involved. And those sorts of opportunities will be pure volunteer opportunities. But as for the actual fellows, they will be paid.
And Erica wanted to know, Jake, if you could share with us, in addition to voting or planting a tree, what are 1 to 2 actions that individuals can take to be involved in the fight for climate resiliency outside of becoming a fellow?
Sure. And actually, this is something that we also have put together a resource. So if you go to, I think it's up on the website, climateactioncorps.ca.gov. We wanted to put together sort of like a top 10 list of individual actions that people could take, things that would not be too intimidating, but that would also move the needle. And so just to think of a few that come to mind, one is to one is to, I think we said hack your thermostat. So make sure that the thermostat in your home is set to an optimal sort of high and low temperature, and that it's timed properly so that you're not wasting energy while you're sleeping or while you're not home. And these are really quick fixes that you can implement pretty easily. Also, water conservation is actually a huge way to save energy and reduce emissions. So there are programs that I think we link to that help homeowners and renters to participate in water conservation programs in their community. There are lots of different like little mini actions that people can take, from composting their food waste to switching to CFL and LED light bulbs, to unplugging the devices, your electric devices in your home when they're not running, that are all a part of this sort of top 10 list that we have aggregated. But I will say, again, like the tired but most important thing to do is to vote, and tell your friends that they need to vote, and particularly your friends that don't live in California and are in battleground states where we really need to change our leadership.
Right, and we dropped those into the chat box, the household climate solutions. Is that what you were referencing, Jake?
Probably.
Yeah. So one more question: is Climate Corps considering planting community gardens in communities that don't have access to healthy food?
Potentially. So the beauty of Climate Corps is that it is totally, the actions that Climate Corps will take will be sort of determined and led by the communities where Climate Corps is present. And we wanted to make sure that these were community-driven solutions that had stakeholder buy-in and that were really in response to the needs that specific communities felt, that they themselves recognized and sought to remedy. And so, I can give you just a couple of examples. For example, we're hoping to support a program in Stockton, which is part of their transformative climate community program, and it's organized by a sort of coalition of groups called Rise Stockton that is working in partnership with the city of Stockton, and they have a whole host of programs that include tree planting, but also electric vehicle charging, some water conservation programs, and it very well may be possible that within that group of programs there is a community garden aspect. I don't know, but there's no reason why a community garden program would be barred from receiving support, or would from being part of a program that is part of the Climate Corps sort of programming. But we haven't affirmatively set out to find those programs. So if you have recommendations for people that we ought to be in touch with and make sure that they are aware of the possibility of having Climate Corps support their work, I would really welcome the opportunity to do that and to connect dots and try to make sure that everybody knows about Climate Corps and the resources that can bring to the program that you may have in mind.
Great, thank you. And I do know those applications for the Climate Corps volunteers were supposed to be due this Friday, right? Or the fellows, but I think they're extending out the application for a little while. Is that right, Jake?
I think that's right.
So yeah, if you know anybody who's interested, the application, it can be found on that website that we sent out. One more question, and then I'm going to close with my my book passage. So Oscar, do you have a project you think that should be done in your neighborhood?
I haven't really thought about it, but hearing Jake, I think that there's a potential to do some kind of project to determine if there are, cold spots or areas that don't have a lot of trees, And I think that that would be something that we can explore in order to bring trees to those areas.
Great, thank you. And I do know just from working on the application that a lot of this, like Jake said, this is the pilot year. These fellows are going to be kind of creating the project portfolio as they go. So we should know a lot more and have some really great ideas by the end of this first year. Obviously, our goal in applying for fellows is to elevate the work we're already doing every day as LA Conservation Corps and the local corps across the state. So we're really excited about working in partnership with Cal Volunteers with this program and seeing where we can take it together moving forward. So thank you again. Thank you, panelists. Thank you for joining us all, guests. And I'm going to close today with a passage from the Overstory. So one of the vignette stories in the book is about a woman author who's doing research. She's writing a book about trees. And she's kind of got a little bit of a writer's block, but she gets ready to unleash here. So she says, something marvelous is happening underground. Something we're just learning how to see. Mats of mycorrhizal cabling link trees into gigantic smart communities spread across hundreds of acres. Together they form vast trading networks of goods, services, and information. There are no individuals in a forest, no separable events. The bird and the branch it sits on are a joint thing. A third or more of the food a big tree makes may go to feed other organisms. Even different kinds of trees form partnerships. Cut down a birch and a nearby Douglas fir may suffer. In the great forests of the East, oaks and hickories synchronize their nut production to baffle the animals that feed on them. Word goes out, and the trees of a given species, whether they stand in sun or shade, wet or dry, bear heavily or not at all together as a community. Forests mend and shape themselves through subterranean synapses, and in shaping themselves, they shape too the tens of thousands of other linked creatures that form it from within. Maybe it's useful to think of forests as enormous, spreading, branching, underground super trees. So we're all a community. We're all in partnership with one another. Thank you so much for being here today, everyone, and hope to see you next Thursday.
Thank you.
Thanks.